My next guest is Pastor Ashton Yackton, and he's in the state of Washington, and he was arrested at the Drag Queen Story Hour at the South Hill Library on June 15th in 2019, so before COVID happened. Why don't you tell your story real quick, Ashton, if you could?
What happened with me was that, we had the first ever Drag Queen Story Hour coming to Spokane, Washington in its history. This had never happened before. This was back in 2019, where you would only see these kind of things happening in, ultra-liberal states like New York, where most of these drag queens actually originated. There's a big organization that organizes these across different states. And so, we got together with a group of Christians and patriots in the area, along with several other pastors, and just there's a pretty big crowd that we got together to go in and protest this. And within that larger protest, there was several of us who actually had the intention of doing our very best to actually stop the Drag Queen Story Hour from occurring. For me, it wasn't enough to just say, hey, we're just going to be out there with signs and protesting while these little children get molested in their minds and are psychologically damaged by seeing these, grown men dressed up as women reading stories about gender fluidity and whatnot to 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. And so, we organized a sit-in protest at the time. We thought, if we can get into the library and just take over the space, we can actually prevent this from happening. Of course, the police had gotten word of this and the opposition had gotten word of this. And so we were met with pretty massive police presence. We had
and just to really quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the whole library grounds was cordoned off with a yellow caution tape, police line, do not cross. And so they would have the drag queen or whoever was in favor of that event on the library grounds. And then if you're a protester protesting it, you had to be across the street. And a number of media outlets, including the New American Magazine, were kicked across the street. I was actually also, but I was the only one who exercised my rights under Washington Constitution, Article 1, Section 5, which has to do with freedom of speech. And I cited that to them, and I was allowed to go back across the street and continue to document. But everybody else all the other media outlets had to be over on the other side of the street. But I wanted just to point that out because in all the body camera footage we got, the police were blatantly asking people, what side are you on? And you had some people saying, what do you mean? I'm just walking down the sidewalk. So we had massive civil rights violations that day. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, interject, anytime. But it was just remarkable to see because, like you were seeing, what our attorneys called it as viewpoint discrimination, which means that based on your ideological, mindset, what you believed, you were either let onto the library or you were told to go across the street, which was far removed from the actual event. And so, immediately they identified me as a protester because I was holding a Bible, I guess, or I didn't look the part of the drag queens. And they just immediately told me that you need to go across the street. And I refused. I said, well this is a public library.
To interject really quickly, how that happened was because we got the body camera footage of it. One of the librarians saw you coming. She went to a cop with their body camera, which we have, and tells her, "Hey, this is a pastor. He's coming to the library, something to that effect." And so that's what tipped them off was one of their own librarians.
That's right. And at that point, we had the police presence was incredible because not only did we have like garrisons of troops of police there and sergeants and all kinds of police, but we had snipers on the roof from the SWAT team pointed at us. This was like a major ordeal we had 100 plus, maybe 150 people from our side and several hundred from the other side. I don't know the exact numbers, but there were a lot of people there. And they basically were telling me that I cannot stand at the public library grounds. That was LGBT territory. pretty much, is in essence what they were saying. And that if we didn't agree with it, we need to leave the premises and go across the street, which to me is insane, that you could even tell someone that they can't be there based on what you believe. And so, I pressed in. I said, no, it's my right to be here. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a resident of Spokane. This is my public library at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It's open. I can go in. And, they kept saying, no, and then we got into a little bit of debate. And ultimately, I was warned that if I don't go into the so-called free speech zone across the way, that I would be arrested. And, my thinking is, well, the entire U.S. is a free speech zone. There is no such thing as a free speech zone. I don't agree to any of that when police try to set that kind of thing up. And they warned me again, and they said, if you're going to have to leave, if you don't go across the street, surrounded by police at this point, we're going to arrest you. And I said, well, you're just going to have to arrest me then. And sure enough, within 5 minutes, I was in handcuffs. I was dragged back to the back of the library, to the paddy wagon. And as they call it, I don't even know that's what those things are called because I've never been arrested before. And I was in handcuffs. I was in chains. The handcuffs weren't enough. They kind of chained me to something, and then to myself, like in a belt or something with chains and the handcuffs too. Threw me in the back of the paddy wagon for about 3 hours, and we're just blasting the air. It was like freezing. It was like frigid in there. I think they purposely done that, and blasting music and all kinds of stuff. It's really crazy.
Spokane, Washington pastor has been arrested and jailed after refusing to move to a so-called free speech zone while speaking with biblical truth on the grounds of the public library there, which was hosting, and you guessed it, a drag queen story hour event. Check this out.
Sir,
I'm just trying to explain something. I'm a U.S. citizen. Last morning. So you're going to arrest me for standing on a public parking lot. Is that right? Let me ask you something.
Okay, no, I'm not here to.
Let me ask you something, sir. So you guys, look, the USA that I grew up in, if a man dressed up as a woman, I'm just talking here.
Disrupting the event that's going on here.
There is no event here. This is a public library.
There is an event.
The only event that they've reserved is a private reading room. The rest of the library is U.S. property. It's public property. I know the laws. You can't change the laws because you feel like it. In my day, when I was a child in the U.S. of A., if a grown man dressed up as a woman and read to a child, the police here would not be stopping me, they would be arresting them. They would be arresting perverts dressed up as women who are men. I didn't say that, I'm just telling you known history. I have a right to free speech wherever I want to speak.
Want to comply with us, you will be arrested as well.
For what? What's the charge?
For obstructing.
Obstructing what?
This event and our duties, you're delaying our ability to create security here.
This tape right here will show there's no obstruction.
Well, you've been advised.
Well, you may have noticed the heavy police presence in that video. According to the Spokane Spokesman newspaper, more than 40 police officers, including what appeared to be SWAT snipers up on the roof of the library, were providing protection for the sexually confused and deviant participants in the event. Now, this was attributed to concern, not based on any actual threat received, that a protester would possibly show up with a gun and begin shooting participants.
And Doc, following his arrest, Pastor Afshan Yakhtan of New Covenant Baptist Church said, "May God use this for his glory and his glory alone. God bless all my supporters and friends and those who inspire me to stand strong for their Lord Jesus by their godly example."